blower came on at 8:12 on a Thursday night in August, and the Ardmore Theater screamed one note. It was a high note, thin and flat and endless, the sound of a kettle nobody was going to take off the stove. 200 people in rented tuxedos turned toward the gold grillwork on the left wall of the auditorium. The contractor who had thrown the switch stood on a stepladder with his hands still raised, looking the way a man looks when he has just backed a truck into something. 11 seconds it held. Then he cut the power and the note bent downward and died, and the whole room laughed. Chase Warrender laughed loudest, because it was his money and his building and his party, and because a man who has spent $2.6 million on a movie palace has to be seen taking a joke. That, he said, spreading his hands, is why we're calling it furniture. Nobody in that room noticed the woman by the lobby doors in the maroon steward's vest, holding a plastic tub of empty glasses against her hip. She had heard the note too. She had heard something else in it that they had not, and her free hand had come up to her collarbone and stayed there. Now, before I take you any further into that night, if stories about people the world walked past are the kind of thing you keep coming back for, go ahead and subscribe. And tell me down in the comments about somebody in your own town whose skill nobody ever put on a poster. I read them. I'm an old man with a lot of evenings. Half the reason I keep telling these is that folks keep writing to me about the ones I'd never have known. Her name was Ilona Berechki, and she was 57 years old, and she had been cleaning the Ardmore since February for $16.80 an hour. She had also been inside its organ chambers before Chase Warrender was born. Her mother, Marta, had swept that theater at night from 1976 until it went dark in 1983. Toledo in those years still had a Hungarian neighborhood down in Birmingham with a butcher who spoke no English, and Marta walked to work and walked home, and after school Ilona came with her because there was nowhere else to put a child. She did her homework in row F. She learned to fold a seat without letting it clap. And on Sunday afternoons, when the Ardmore ran its silent picture series to about 40 people who mostly came for the warmth, she sat where she could watch the console rise out of the pit. The man on the bench was Curtis Wheatley. He drove a bakery route 6 days a week and played that organ on the 7th, and he had been doing it since 1974. He was a patient man with enormous hands and a habit of humming a half step under whatever he was playing, which drove the projectionist crazy. When he caught the cleaning lady's daughter mouthing the chord changes, he did not make a speech about it. He moved over on the bench. She was 9. He taught her the way a bakery driver teaches, early, fast, and without paperwork. Sunday mornings before the doors opened, 6 years of them. He taught her that a theater organ is not a church organ wearing a costume. A church organ keeps its ranks separate, one voice to one keyboard the way a choir stands in sections. A theater organ unifies. 15 ranks of pipes get wired so that any rank can speak from any keyboard at any of half a dozen pitches, which is how 15 ranks pretend to be an orchestra of 60. It also means one sick rank does not sit down quietly in the back. It shows up everywhere in every registration, like a cousin at a wedding. He taught her the shutters. The pipes live in 2 rooms behind those gold grills, and the only way out is through a wall of hinged wooden shades worked by a pedal under the player's right foot. Everything the audience hears has been let out on purpose. A theater organist does not play loud and soft with her fingers. She plays it with her ankle. And he taught her the picture. There is no score for a silent film. There is a reel and a room full of people and you, and the whole craft is arriving where the film arrives without the audience ever hearing you steer. You learn to feel a cut coming a beat before it lands. You learn to thin out under a title card so people can read at their own speed and to come back up underneath them just as their eyes lift. Anybody can play the notes, Curtis told her. You're playing the room. He died in 2009. She played at the service on a spinet badly because she was crying. Ilona never went to a conservatory. There was no money, and then at 22 there was a baby, and then there was only work. But there was almost always an instrument attached to the work because she went looking for it. 22 years at the Starlight Roller Rink on Airport Highway, 4 nights a week on a console organ with a cracked bench, learning to hold a crowd of teenagers at one tempo for 90 minutes. 9 years of funerals at Hallis & Son, where you learn to read a room that will not look at you. Weddings. A Lutheran church that needed somebody the second Sunday of every month. She raised her son Andras on that and on double shifts, and he grew up and moved to Columbus and sold insurance and called on Sundays. She had not touched a theater organ in 19 years, not because she had lost anything, because there was not one left in this town that worked. That was the part Chase Warrender never asked about. He was 41 and he was not a cruel man, whatever the internet decided later. He had bought a corpse of a building, a 1926 movie palace that spent 23 years as a furniture warehouse and 11 more as nothing, and he had put a roof on it when nobody else would. He had the plaster cherubs recast. He had the proscenium regilded by a man from Cleveland who charged like a surgeon. He was turning it into a venue for weddings and corporate dinners, and on the drawings the organ console was labeled "Mi Curita," decorative. He said the word furniture at the donor lunch in May. He said it in the newspaper profile in June. He said it to the man from the Historical Commission who wrote it down. "It's a beautiful object," he said, "but it's an object. Nobody's played one of these seriously since talkies." Vernon Pyle heard that one. Vernon was 74, a retired lineman for the power company, and he ran the Maumee Valley Theater Organ Society out of a 3-ring binder. For 19 years, while the Ardmore sat dark and the pigeons got in, Vernon and 4 other men had been climbing into those chambers with shop lights and a checkbook nobody funded, keeping the leather from turning to cornflakes. When the renovation started, Warrender's people thanked them and took back the key. Vernon knew Ilona from the rink where he used to bring his granddaughters. When she got the cleaning job, he told her, only half joking, to keep her ears open. "They've got it wired to the wrong thing," he said. "Somebody's going to hit that switch cold one day and get a surprise." That was in March. The surprise came in August. Between the two, 3 things happened that nobody wrote down. In June, the plaster crew opened an access panel in the left chamber wall to run a conduit, and Ilona swept up after them for 4 nights. She knew what white dust on a pipe chest meant. She left a note about it on the work order pad in the site trailer in block letters with the panel's location. 2 days later, she found the sheet in the recycling bin under a coffee cup. In July, she asked the site superintendent for 5 minutes inside the chamber with a flashlight. He was not unkind about it. He said the word liability twice and offered her a bottle of water. And at the walkthrough at the end of July, the gilders were spraying with the shutter frames standing open and unmasked 11 feet from their guns. Warrender's operations director told the housekeeping crew, in front of everybody, that the console was set dressing and nobody was to clean inside it. Ilona went home that night and sat in her car in the lot for a while before she started it. She was 57 years old and she had been told no by better rooms than that one. But there is a particular kind of tired that comes from knowing exactly what is about to break and being the wrong person to say so. After the note died and the laughing stopped, the party did what parties do, which is move on to the shrimp. Warrender was 3 feet from Ilona, mid-story, when the woman he was talking to asked whether the organ could ever actually be made to work. "Sure," he said. "Give me $100,000 and a specialist from Kansas." "Or a screwdriver," Ilona said. She had not planned to say it. She said it the way you say something at the end of a very long day. Warrender turned. He looked at the vest and the tub of glasses, and he smiled because 200 people had gone quiet in that pleasant, ugly way crowds do. "You know something about organs? I know that one. That one is furniture." "That one has a cipher," she said. "One pipe. It's holding a valve open. And the shades are painted shut, which is why you thought there was nothing behind them." Somebody near the bar laughed, and it was not a kind laugh, and Ilona felt her face go hot, and she thought about her car in the employee lot and how easy it would be to be in it. Warrender was a gambler by profession. He had also had 2 glasses of wine. "Tell you what," he said, loud enough for the room, "make it play tonight, and it's yours. The console, the pipes, all of it. I'll write it into the deed." Now, anybody who has ever been the only person in a room who knows what the noise means will understand the next 30 seconds. She set the tub down on a cocktail table. She asked Vernon Pyle, who was standing by the doors in the only suit he owned, for a $19 flashlight. The access door to the left chamber is behind a curtain on the mezzanine landing, and it is 31 inches wide. She went in, still wearing the vest. Inside a pipe chamber it is hot and it smells like leather and old dust, and the pipes stand in ranks on their chests like a wheat field somebody built out of tin and sugar pine. She did not have to hunt. A cipher tells you where it lives. She walked the tibia rank until she found the pipe that had been screaming, and she put the flashlight on the chest under it, and there it was. A chip of ceiling plaster, fresh, white, sharp-edged, about the size of a thumbnail. It had come down through an access panel the plaster crew had left open in June, landed on the valve seat, and held that 1/notes pallet a 1/16 of an inch off its seat. Wind is wind. It goes where the hole is. She picked it out with 2 fingers and put it in her vest pocket. The shades took longer. The gilders had sprayed the chamber wall in July and had not masked the shutter frames, and 11 of the 20 shades were stuck to their stops with a bead of dried lacquer. She and Vernon went down the row with a putty knife, cracking them one at a time, 47 minutes. She came out with plaster dust in her hair and a rip in her sleeve, and the room, which had gotten a good deal drunker, gave her a slow clap that she could feel the shape of. Then she asked the contractor to hit the blower again. 7.5 horsepower came up under the building, and the wind pressure settled at 10 inches, and this time the Ardmore did not scream. It breathed. There is a sound an organ makes before a single key is touched. A low push of moving air behind a wall felt more than heard, and 200 people in a gilded room went quiet without being asked. Ilona sat down at the console. She had a problem and she knew it. 186 donors were standing there expecting a trick, and a trick was exactly the wrong thing. So she asked for the house lights down, and she asked the AV kid, Ozzy Marine, 24 years old and the only person there under 30, whether there was anything in the booth. There was. A two-reel comedy in a rusted can left in a corner of the projection room since 1983, labeled in grease pencil, The Ice Wagon. Ozzy got it threaded in 9 minutes. Nobody in that building had ever seen it, neither had she. That is the part I want you to hold on to. She had no score, no rehearsal, and no idea what was about to happen on that screen. The leader ran out and the title card came up. Ilona brought her right foot back, let the shades open maybe a third of the way, and started in on an old waltz. After the Ball, which was already an antique when this theater was new. A title card wants something the audience recognizes, so they can stop listening to it and start reading. Then the picture began and she went to work. Here is what the room saw and did not understand it was seeing. When the ice wagon rolled downhill, her left hand walked a bass line that got a half step faster every 4 bars, and nobody could have told you when it changed. When the horse stopped dead and the driver went over the front, she killed everything but one thin reed and let a full second of near silence sit there, and 200 people made a noise like a door opening. When the film cut from the street to the kitchen, she was already in the new key before the frame changed, so the room never heard a seam. She did that 40 or 50 times in 19 minutes. That is the whole art. If she had done it badly, they would have noticed it. Done well, it is invisible, which is why the men who did it for a living never got their names on anything. And her ankle never stopped moving loud for the runaway, down under every title card so the slow readers could keep up again as their eyes lifted, right on time every time. At the end, the driver got his ice back, and the wagon turned the corner, and Ilona took her hands off the keys and let the tibia and the tremulant hang on the last chord until it faded into the wall. There was a silence in that room that I would have liked to sit in. Then a woman in the 4th row started clapping, and she was crying, and she did not appear to know it. Chase Warrender did not come over for 11 minutes. When he did, he had his jacket off and his hands in his pockets, and he looked like a man doing arithmetic he did not enjoy. Nobody told me the thing had a job, he said. She was wiping lacquer off the putty knife with a bar napkin. I didn't fix anything, she said. I took something out of it that didn't belong in there. That's not what I meant, I know. He was good for his word, more or less, which surprised a number of people. His lawyer talked him out of the deed. What he offered instead was better, and he knew it. Her name on the organ, a maintenance line in the operating budget, and a job, house organist, salary, benefits, no more vests. Within 3 weeks there were other offers, because there always are. A presenting agency in Chicago wanted 11 dates on a restored theater circuit. A man from a label wanted to record her on somebody else's 4 manual in Rochester. Woman from a foundation used the word residency 4 separate times. Ilona Beretsky said no to every one of them. She was 57. She had a mother's grave in Calvary and a son in Columbus and a rink out on Airport Highway that had closed in 2010, with her tempo still in a few hundred people's legs. She had spent 40 years being the person a room needed and did not look at, and it turned out she did not want a room that looked at her. She wanted the one she already had. So she named her price, and it was not money. One Sunday afternoon a month, October through April, the Ardmore opens its doors and shows a silent picture, and it is free, and there is no dinner package and no bar. Vernon Pyle's Society gets its key back, and its 4 volunteers get badges. The organ gets tuned twice a year by a man who does have to come from Kansas. The first Sunday in October, 109 people came, most of them from the neighborhood, several of them old enough to remember the Sunday series the first time around. By February, they were turning people away at 400, and Warrender put a second show at 4 o'clock and stood at the back of it, which is not something he had to do. Ilona still keeps the chip of plaster in a coffee can on the console. I have spent a fair part of my life around instruments nobody was looking at. Church basements, mostly, and school gymnasiums where the piano lived under the bleachers. And what I've come to think is that we've got the whole business backwards. We keep asking whether a person is good enough for the instrument. The instrument's been sitting there for 41 years asking whether anybody in the room knows what it's for. Chase Warrender spent $2.6 million making that theater beautiful, and he was not wrong to. But beautiful is a thing you do to a building. A building only comes back when somebody who knows its business walks in the door, and more often than not, that person is already on the payroll, pushing a cart, waiting for somebody to hit the switch. The Ardmore Theater, Ilona Beretsky, Chase Warrender, Curtis Wheatley, Vernon Pyle, and every street business and organization in this story are creative inventions, and this is true-to-life fiction rather than a factual account. Any resemblance to real people, living or dead, or to real places or events is entirely coincidental.